and welcome. My name is Helen and I'm a volunteer for the Spiritist Society of Melbourne. And today I'm going to be presenting on the topic, the opposites. And what I'll be doing is sharing my insights into the topic. I'm a student of the Spiritist philosophy, and as such, I might have slightly different views from other people from this group or other Spiritist group, because what I'm sharing is related to my level of knowledge. And as students of Spiritism, we know that people are in different evolutionary levels. So what I'm going to share to my very best is that what I know within my capacity. So today is a very interesting topic called the opposites. And I'm going to start with a question. Are you familiar with the term shadow? And shadow in the sense of our psyche. That's the first question, so we can ponder on. And the second would be, what does this have to do with our happiness? What is our shadow and what does it have to do with our happiness? So hopefully we'll discuss this and bring some clarity around those concepts. And for today's study, we are using the book Changing Attitudes, and it's on the chapter, The Opposites. And this book was dictated by the spirit Hamed, which is a higher spirit, and dictated to the medium Francisco do Espírito Santo Neto. I also used the Spirit's book and the Gospel according to Spiritism. And the Spirit's book is a collection of answers to questions formulated by Kardec and his team. And the answers were from higher spirits that communicated through various mediums. And Allan Kardec did the work of collecting that and finding the commonalities and putting it together in a book. I also use, and basically the Gospel according to Spiritism, which is the teachings of the Christ in light to the Spiritist philosophy. So these are the three books that I'm using today. So if we look here, and we're going to see what Carl Gustav Jung said about the shadow. And Hamed says, the term shadow was coined by Carl Gustav Jung, eminent Swiss psychiatrist and psychologist, to define the rejected side of human reality, which remains unconscious because we don't want to see it. So all of us have parts of our personality and of our being that we are okay with, that are the bright and shiny things that we're proud of. And we also have aspects of our personality that we don't really want to see, either because we're not aware or because we don't like that part of our personality. And when we hide that, and when we do not want to look at that, that's what Carl Gustav Jung called the shadow. And we're going to see, because it's in our unconscious, like Hamed said, it's the rejected side that remains in the unconscious. What happens is it dictates sometimes our lives without us knowing it. So it's very important that when we want to improve in some area of our life, that we bring what's unconscious to our conscious awareness, because then we can understand and actually make peace with these parts of our reality that we're not very comfortable with. So here I put a picture of the dark side of the moon, which is the part that we don't know about ourselves. So before we start in this one, like I said, you have to understand and become aware. And there's a passage where Jesus was brought, somebody brought them to him a woman that was caught in adultery. And at the time, it was the law that the person was stoned. And Jesus was there, and they brought this woman, and they really wanted to see if he would contradict and go against the laws of their times. So very briefly, for those who have never seen this passage of Jesus' life, you can find it either in the Gospel according to Spiritism, and that's in chapter 10, like it's written here in the item 12, or you can find it in John, and it's chapter 8, and it's items 3 to 11. Okay, if you want to really see the words that was used then. I'm just going to say it in the way that I understood. So Jesus was there, and a crowd of men brought this woman and put her in a circle and said to Jesus, look, this woman was caught in adultery, and as the laws of our time demand, she should be stoned. And asked him, what should we do? And then this is what happens. This is what is in John. And because they continued to question him, he stood up and said, let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her. And again, he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So it is said that Jesus was sitting and writing on the ground very calmly and paying attention to what was happening. But because they insisted that he gave them an answer, he sent a message that was kind of a question. It was a question that came in form of a sentence. Because what he was really asking is, are you without sin? So you can stone this person that you believe that is with sin. And sin is wrongdoing, okay? That's what we're going to use here in our conversation today. So when he brought that, what he wanted was for people to look inside themselves and understand that they were accusing someone externally, but what they really wanted was a relief to things that they had done wrong. And that's what Carl Gustav Jung explains with the shadow. So there's a mechanism of the ego called projection. The ego has several defense mechanisms, but we're just going to focus on projection because that's what happened in this passage, and that's what we're going to discuss about the two sides of our personalities. So when they brought the woman, Jesus already knew, because for Jesus, people were like open books to him. He had a clear understanding of our psychology and our evolutionary age as well. So because he knew that for our evolutionary age, we were still projecting unwanted things on other people, he knew exactly what was happening there at that moment. That what the people were doing was trying to find a relief to their consciousness and their wrongdoings, and that they would make of this woman an scapegoat. And momentarily, while they were there and they were stoning her according to the law, momentarily they would feel a relief. But that obviously he knew that wasn't going to solve any problem. But momentarily they would forget about the things that they had done wrong, and they would project that into that woman and make her an scapegoat. So he knew he couldn't say anything. He actually had to bring people to introspect and look within to see if what they were criticizing in the other person or judging in the other person, they had or they didn't have. So what this passage continues is when he started writing down in the ground after he said what he said, people slowly started moving away. And after some time, only the woman stood there in front of Jesus, extremely ashamed and embarrassed. And he looked at her and he said, "Where are your accusers, woman?" And she said, "They all left." And Jesus said, "Well, I don't have anything against you, so you can go." And that led this woman to transform her life. It's a beautiful passage, but there's a beautiful message that we can bring it to our day today. So what happens is we don't stone people anymore with stones, at least not here, not where I know of. But we do that in a different way. And I was watching a documentary on Netflix where a woman was on the documentary, it's called Embrace. She was talking about how women should learn to be comfortable in their own bodies and that we should value more what a person has inside than their appearance. And she took some pictures, she's a mom of 3, and she didn't want people to be too concerned about appearance and more concerned about what they have inside and what they have to offer to society. And she took some pictures of herself comfortable in her own body. And then she read the comments. And when I saw that, it was so clear that it's the modern day stoning of other people is social media, and how people are extremely aggressive and would say things that were horrendous, that they would never say to the person's face, but they were saying it there. And similar to what happened in this passage that happened more than 2,000 years ago, we still continue to project the things that we don't want to see in ourselves, in other people, as a form of relief. So this chapter in Changing Attitudes is important because it brings us to reflect, isn't it time for us to change? Isn't it time for us to stop projecting whatever it is that we don't want to see in ourselves, and rather look into ourselves and face whatever it is that we don't want to see? So if we continue here, Hamed says, we are always tempted to hide our vulnerabilities because we don't want to accept that it's natural to have a part of us that's confident and generous, while the other part is doubtful and egotistic. So all of us have different flavors or different sides of our personality. And it's okay that some of them are developed and some of them are yet to be developed. And that's what in the beginning it says that Jesus knew that we were in our evolutionary stage, like our phase of evolution, where that is still a mechanism of defense, the projection and the judgment of others. I like this picture and what it says. So Hamed says, we must recognize and admit our negative aspects. And that is the only way to face our closed addicts and develop our spiritual maturity. If we look and make a comparison, say, to finances and debts, there are some people that when they have debts, what they do is they look, okay, how much do I owe to people? How am I going to do to pay this? But many people I know, they don't even want to look at their financial situation. They just want to close their eyes and pretend that there's nothing there. So we can use that as a metaphor to aspects of our personality that are negative aspects. And we want to open up a parenthesis here to say that emotions, there's nothing wrong with any kind of emotions. all the emotions have a reason to be. It's just how we express our emotions. And we've discussed that in previous videos, not only myself, but also Thiago, that's also a volunteer, and talking about that the emotion normally comes up for a reason, and how we react is actually a choice. So there's nothing wrong as per se with our emotions and feelings. It's just that we perceive them as negative because we don't know how to react, or we react in a way that we are not happy with afterwards. Okay? Just opening that parenthesis because it says admit our negative aspects. So if we really want to change, we have to be like those smart financial people that look at their debts or what's wrong or what they're doing wrong that's causing them to be in debt and solve that issue. So what Hamed is inviting us is to look at this closed attics of our personality, where we close the door and we don't want to look what's inside, so we can actually develop ourselves and develop our spiritual maturity. And he continues saying that by admitting our positive and negative aspects, in other words, our polarity, that's what he called, we will come to realize our ambivalence, thus rejecting the obstacles that prevent us from being authentic. So if we do not have a good relationship with the aspects of in our personality that we still have to develop, and he called this our polarity, that sometimes we're kind, but sometimes we're rude. Sometimes we're very easygoing. Sometimes we're very difficult. If we don't know how to deal with this change in our personality, we start pretending to be certain people. We're not authentic who we really are. And we try to get admiration from others, or we are looking for others to actually approve of us. That's the word I was looking for, sorry. So we try to seek approval, and therefore we try to hide the aspects that we don't like, because people might also not like that. And that prevents us from being authentic. And it leads us to using several different masks for different occasions. And by masks is what I mean is certain personas or personalities that we kind of step into when we're dealing with this or that person or situation. In a sense, masks or personalities are okay, because say if I'm a teacher, then I step into that teacher kind of role when I'm a teacher, and then if I am a mom, I step into that role, and then if I am a friend or if I am a spouse, I step into those different roles. The problem is when you step into those roles to get approval, or if you don't know how to step out of the roles, and that's where we start not being who we truly are. In accepting the opposite as natural elements of human structure, we learn not to behave as a pendulum, oscillating between the extremes. So when we know that we have these different aspects, we don't tend to hide, and therefore we don't need to project that. And there are some exercises called shadow work. I highly recommend that you have a search on the internet and look at shadow work. And if we have time, I'll teach a little exercise that is absolutely fantastic, that really helps us understand ourselves. And it makes our lives easier because when we have a very strong reaction to something that somebody is doing, and that's not necessarily abusive towards us, or towards another human being, we just get really irritated. Probably it's because we have that in ourselves and we are having trouble admitting it. So when we perceive that the opposite are natural elements of human structure, like Hamed said, then we won't go from one stream to another. Because when we protect ourselves and say, no, I don't have anything, I don't have that within me, like the people that were going to stone the woman, what they would do is say, no, I have nothing to do with that. Forgetting that for somebody to be caught in adultery, they had to be with someone. So, and perhaps even the person was there to stone that woman. So people step into that has nothing to do with me, instead of saying, where is it in myself that I might have that? And that's why I'm being so judgmental. Now, there's something that we find in the Gospel according to Spiritism, and that's in chapter 10 in the item 13, where they say that there are two aspects when we judge someone, or when we criticize, or when we reprove someone. One of them is really because there's something wrong being done, and we want to contain that. And the other one is actually when you're thinking less of a person and you really want to discredit that person. So when Jesus did that exercise with those people who were there trying to stone that woman, he was trying to show that one thing is when there's something really wrong, and you might need to intervene, and you might need to reprove, because you want to contain that. And the other is when you see something and you want to discredit that person. And that might be because you don't want to look in yourself, because what you are seeing is very similar to what you are. And then you criticize externally because you don't want to look inside, or because you have a complex. And when you discredit someone, it seems that your level of importance, self-importance, rises. That is false, obviously, but you have that impression. So when you're comfortable with the opposites, you start going back to the equilibrium, which is the middle. You don't go from one extreme to the other as a pendulum. And look at what he says here, that the polarities united form the totality or the unity. Our view depends on both of them so that our observation and structure are not lame. And he summarized saying, in summary, bringing polarities together in our conscious helps us to become whole beings. And when we observe the great spiritual masters, they are very balanced. And the way they behave towards what they see in other people is always in a way to assist that person. And you can see that they're really connected to their whole being. And Hamed brings that if we want to be a whole, we have to bring those polarities and unite them and bring peace. So we are comfortable with all aspects of our personality. He says that we need to recognize our human condition in the evolutionary development process. So slowly we should shed light in our shadow, the shadow aspect of our personality. And as we do, we start to make peace with the parts that we believe are inadequate. And instead of just realizing that that's part of our level of development, and that's why we have these aspects within us. And in the Gospel, according to Spiritism, chapter 10 and the item 13, the higher spirit says, what they share is, furthermore, is it not the duty of all mankind to help fellow creatures toward progress? So when we learn about ourselves and we become comfortable with our totality or what we really are, it's much easier to accept that in another person. And therefore, we won't be projecting what we don't want to see in ourselves. And our human relations will improve for sure. So what he says is, there's nothing to correct or fix in us except to improve the way we see things. And I mentioned that in a previous video as well, that there's nothing wrong with us except our mentality, our beliefs, and the way we see things. And as we improve the way we see things, and if you look at this photo, I really liked it because what appears to be black and white on the outside, if we adjust our internal vision and we see things as a whole, we can see beyond the reality that is in front of us, and we can see the colors and the nuances of what's happening externally. Now, what could be the solution to that, we may ask? So, okay, we know that we have a shadow, so we raise awareness. I know I have a shadow. How can I make peace with something that I'm not comfortable with in myself? And Hamed brings us the answer, saying that the vital element to unite the opposite is called love. And it will be the love for self and the love for others and the love for creation. And what is this love for self, love for others, and love for creation, if not the greatest commandment or the greatest teaching that was ever left here on this planet, which is love thy neighbor as thyself. And so if we see that having patience and self-love towards ourselves, not pushing away the negative, but understanding that that's something that's in the process of being transformed. Having that same kind of vision towards the others, not accepting abuse, but if when you're called, help the person see that that's not acceptable, but avoid criticizing something just to discredit the person that's in front of you or the situation. And I finish with this, that all the knowledge that we need to transform ourselves is already available. That's not in this chapter, okay? It just comes in different packages from the diverse inhabitants, for the diverse inhabitants of this planet. So I once heard in a book, a higher spirit saying that what we truly need to transform ourselves is already here with us. We're also always thinking or seeking, what's the next, what's the next thing that I have to. And what the higher spirits say is that everything we need to transform ourselves is already available. And I add, has always been available for those who are ready to see. So what we find is that the truth that will help us transform comes in different packages or in different languages or in different forms of expression to cater for all the differences in the world. But the essence is that golden rule, that greatest commandment or that greatest teaching, which talks about love towards self and towards others and towards creation and the creator. Because if you love God, our creator, you truly love God, you would be working on loving yourself and loving others. So I leave everyone with a question. What are we waiting for? So it's time to really put our hands in what we need to do to look at ourselves and make the changes that we need to make. And I think we have a few minutes. I'll just teach the exercise, the shadow exercise, because it's incredibly valuable. So what you have to do is when you notice that I'll give an example as well. When you notice that you are incredibly irritated towards a person, when you have the opportunity, you sit down and you write 3 adjectives or characteristics that irritate you the most. So I'll do it parallel as doing an example. I was with my daughter and we were watching a lecture, and there was this one person that would always put their hand up and interrupt and say something. And I noticed that I was starting to feel uncomfortable with that. And midway through the lecture, I was really uncomfortable because the person was always interrupting the person who was speaking, and it was really, really disruptive for me. And I was looking around, and it seemed like nobody felt the same. Because I know of shadow and projecting, I said, okay, so what exactly is bothering me in this person? And I thought, I don't normally interrupt people, but what is it that this person is doing exactly in what's bothering? And I did that mentally because it was really bothering me. So the first step is write down 3 things. It can be 2 or 3. I recommend 3 things that really bother you in the attitude or whatever it is that the person is doing or the situation. The second thing is ask yourself, where is it that I do that? Where is it that I am selfish, or I'm opinionated, or whatever it is that you notice? And then suddenly you'll have an epiphany and you will see that what you are seeing in that person is exactly something that you are not comfortable within yourself. So the first step is notice that you're irritated first, right? Before the steps. And then write down what is it that is bothering you. Then look within and say, what is it exactly that's bothering you? And after that, you make peace with yourself, because once you realize, it's so incredible, you have a huge relief, and that doesn't bother you as much as before. Okay, so that's my tip. And I hope that you got some value from what I brought here today. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you very much.